Thanks a lot. I guess I'll quickly tell you, kind of my journey right before HonestDoor and why we decided to start it. And I also want you guys to be able to ask questions throughout. Who knows if I have an hour long or 40-minute long presentation, but I think it's really important if you guys have questions, don't hesitate to ask them. Don't even wait till the end because, it's more relevant then and then it will be at the end. So anyway, I urge you guys to kind of try to get involved if you want. So I went to the U of A, and then right after I graduated from the U of A at business. So I wasn't, a technical person like maybe many of you are here. I decided to start a company. It was a digital billboard company, which at the time was kind of novel. It was those large format digital screens that you would put on highways or popular corners, and then we would sell ads on them. And then I kind of got into the software side of things because we were experimenting with different software and different third-party software that would actually detect what type of vehicles were going by which signs in hopes to try to sell that particular ad space for more money. And so if it could detect that, more Mercedes were going than like an older type of car, we would say, hey, this is the billboard that you want to advertise on, and this one costs more money. So it was pretty novel at the time. It was probably about 10 years ago. And anyway, we grew that company across Alberta, and we were signing leases and into BC. And then we sold it to the Jim Pattison Group, who kind of dominates the advertising space amongst other industries in Canada. So it was one of the largest private companies in the country. So that was cool. And then I got some seed capital from that and then kind of rolled it into real estate because didn't really know what else. And, you ask people and they're like, oh, real estate's cool. So just blindly, I kind of went in and just started buying some real estate, maybe with a little more thought than that, but not much more thought. And then with that, I kind of discovered that real estate's very archaic and it's a very, very weird industry. And I'll get into why it's strange and maybe cool ways that it could still be disrupted. But anyway, bought a bunch of real estate, went to UCLA, tried to do real estate development, did a couple projects, not very big ones, thought it was pretty capitally intensive. And then I always thought I could do those later in life. And then I kind of returned to tech and thought, hey, maybe I'll make another run at it and start HonestDoor. So now, if you go to honestdoor.com, it's a website that has a ton of data. So if you go, there's a search bar there, and you could, like a Google search bar, could put any address you want in, and you'll be able to find what your home is worth, city assessed prices for the last 10 years, what the tax payments have been, any permits that have been on that particular house, like a deck, a hot tub, a roof. And then our valuation, of course, for the last year, what we think it's worth and how we've been trending with that particular valuation. And then this year, we're actually going to release the 1-year forecast on what we think your home will be worth. I think it'll be tricky to get those nailed down. A lot of companies just release a number just because they, we released a 1-year forecast, and who cares about the accuracy? It's also a big thing in startups and tech. And of course, using AI as a buzzword is also pretty big. So anyway, that's kind of our journey, and that's kind of what HonestDoor does. So the whole point of it was, if you guys know, and I don't know if you know, but Zillow is a big company in the United States, and they introduced a Zestimate, which was like a home valuation for every single property across the US. And then one day they just blew it out online. So everyone's clicking their property, clicking their girlfriend, boyfriend's property, any property they want. They're like, wow, that's so cool. I've never known what it could be worth. And so what we decided to do is a similar version of that, 10 years later than Zillow, but nonetheless, it didn't exist for Canada. And so we put a home valuation for every single home in the country. And then in some places we were really right, and in some places we weren't. And then we just hoped that technology would get better, our models would get better, they would train on more data, and then a couple of years later that'd be very accurate. Turns out in some places they're still not accurate, and maybe that's something we could all discuss. You do need a lot of data. Our site's cool too because so much data comes in. So thousands of people will call us or email us, every single month and be like, my HonestDoor price sucks. You guys don't know what you're doing. You wrote it's 700,000, but it's 900,000. And so what's cool is we get those submissions, and then we actually ask people to tell us why you think it's worth more. And then they give us all this user data. So we're compiling our own proprietary data set just from like the thousands and thousands of people every month that are trying to change their HonestDoor price, which is pretty cool on its own, because to get proprietary data in real estate is very, very difficult. So the only ways you can get real estate data, and we get requests from a lot of like students across the country, be like, oh, I know how to solve home valuations, give us some of your data. And sometimes we do give them like a couple neighborhoods, and no one seems to be able to solve it. So I guess I'm here to also like challenge you guys, because you guys are on the opposite side of things, where you think that, you know, with enough data, you'll be able to nail it. You can get the best home valuation model out there. But it turns out that sometimes it's not that easy, because our accuracy rates are the same as, say, Zillow's accuracy rates. And we're a team of 6, and they're a team of, you know, call it 6,000. Not all of them are trying to do that one particular task, but they're a big team worth $10 billion. And they even had a competition recently. It was like $1 million to the person who can come up with the best valuation formula. I think it was like a year or two ago. I think it was someone from U of T actually that won the $1 million. But if you again look at their accuracy rates that they publish very regularly, and then we look at our accuracy rates, they're all the same. So it seems to be this funny place where no one could nail it or get over a certain threshold of accuracy. Anyway, that's a little bit about the industry. So let me try to switch slides here. So essentially what we did, once we nailed all the home values across the country, we got a lot of traffic to the site, and we got some investors. We were like, hey, we had 10,000 users, 20, 30, 40, 50. And to put it into perspective, right now we had about 600,000 visitors that come to the site every single month from across the country. And we're obviously trying to continue to grow that. But it kind of felt like we were coming up short, because, you know, we've empowered you. You have all the data. You didn't have to go to an agent. You didn't have to call the city. You didn't have to dig around for all the data. We made it easier to find everything that you wanted to find about a particular home, but you still, what then? You couldn't buy a house without a real estate agent. You couldn't sell a home without a real estate agent. So then we were like, oh, maybe we should take a stab at that part of the business, which is pretty difficult to disrupt. This is just a slide of everything I've already kind of mentioned. So everyone, and even our investors and future investors, I mean, they're like, oh my God, we need to disrupt real estate. It's this $1 trillion behemoth. If we can put AI and, you know, data science and mesh it in a pot, it'll be very cool. So we too are trying to figure that out. And so, back to my point on what we're trying to do now. So now we're trying to make it so if we've empowered people enough and they're confident enough with all the data they've given them, maybe they should try to actually transact on their own. And so right now we're letting people list their homes on the MLS, which is a place where all the real estate listings live. And that's a whole nother conversation on disrupting the MLS. But we put our listings up on the MLS like a realtor would, but it's $500. It's a kind of like a self-listing option, kind of like you're selling a skateboard on Facebook Marketplace. And you know, you drag and drop your photos, you say this is the most beautiful house ever, and you put your price. And then you answer the phone calls. And it's not really all that crazy. You know, you pick up the phone and someone wants to view your home tomorrow at 6 p.m. and you say, no, I can't at 6, I can at 7. And they come and view your home and hopefully get an offer. No different than what really happens today. So I kind of also open to discussing the process on how it works to buy and sell a home today, because maybe there's something that can be disrupted there. And so it's working pretty well. I mean, since January, I think we've done about 300 on the sell side of things, 300 listings, and not all of the people have sold, but the people that were, I guess, priced right, managed to sell. And some people were experienced real estate investors, and some people had never, ever sold a home before. So we got all types of people doing it. So anyway, what I urge people to do and tell their friends and their families is that the amount of money that's lost in a real estate transaction today is so big. And people don't realize how big it is. Like, they could do the math and they're like, oh, well, it's only $25,000 on a $700,000 property, for example, or $35,000. It's not that much because this property is, you know, worth so much money. But it's the wrong way to think about it, because you didn't put $700,000 down, I don't think. And so you're you might only be invested 5%, and roughly it's a little bit lower than that, but let's call it 5% or 4% or 3% is lost. So pretty much all this equity that you put in and you saved and however you got that money put into a house, and then as soon as you sell because you found a better house, you can't. So and it's because you're stuck because the transaction fees are so high. So anyway, that's a big thing on what we wanted to disrupt. And sure, the AI part and the data science part that we're doing is really, we're trying to make as many cool, creative ways to access data on our website in order for people now to kind of take that next plunge and be able to transact. And so today it's home values, tomorrow it'll be the 1-year forecast, and now we're playing with a whole bunch of different ways, even like an AI chatbot, because so many times people are asking us questions where it's really the data. So it'd be very cool if we can, nail that, and maybe someone's got some ideas on that. But the goal would be the same thing you would do to a real estate agent, be like, hey, how big can I build this house, or which direction does the backyard face, or how many square feet are in the basement? All these things are all in our back end, and they should all be able to be dealt with, through a conversation. So that's what we're working on. A lot goes into this site. So we take data from different sources in every single city that we're in. So in Edmonton, there might be 10 different sources of data that we take. And then, we had to build, I'm not technical, but an ingestion pipeline. And so pretty much all the data has to come from all these different places. It has to be normalized so that we could stitch it all together into one place. And it has to be updated, every day or every week or every month, depending on that particular data set. And then eventually that data flows down into our other models that we've created with machine learning, and then it updates every single month, and then we track the accuracy. And then that happens for every single city across the country. So there's a lot going on. And so now we're actually getting more MLS data that we're able to use. Before, it wasn't even MLS data, which is like what the real estate boards have collected over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It was our own data. So we would go to like Open Data Edmonton, Open Data Toronto, Vancouver, Hamilton. We'd call the municipalities and they'd have a different data set. We'd call the provinces, they'd have a different data set. And so there's lots of ways, if you're into real estate, that you could, for free, publicly get all this data and try to do some cool stuff with it. Or you can even ask us and maybe we'll give you guys some data too. So that's essentially how all the data things happen over there. I wanted to kind of show you guys, so this is kind of our accuracy. And this is almost like, it's real, but it's almost more of a commercial slide. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. This is a cool slide for just like someone general looking at it like, oh, cool, you're more accurate in Alberta than you are in Quebec. Probably means you just have less data there. So we can get fairly accurate, and accuracy to a lot of people means different things, right? I could say your house is worth 600, you'd be like, no, my house is worth 650, and then they would think we suck. Another person would be like, wow, that was amazing. How'd you even know that we were that close? So, I mean, there's some expectations there. We're trying to actually come up with a model where you could tweak it a bit. So if we don't know that you had a renovated basement and things like that, you could, yeah, please.
Why don't you find accuracy by just exactly what it sold for? Isn't that the correct measure of what it's actually worth?
Yeah, so they're trying to get the valuation of a property that has not been sold. So,
how do you know?
And how do we know? Well, we know once that property sells. So they ask us traditionally, hey, what's my home worth? They look at it, 600. They think it's worth more. Then it goes on the market, and then it sells for 625. And then that's how we get the 600 versus the 625.
So I understand when it sells, that's a real number.
Yeah.
Everything else is just what you think it might be.
Exactly.
These accuracies are based on what it actually sold for?
What it actually ended up selling for, yeah. But what I did want to show you, and this is just something I had someone prepare just this morning, and this is Zillow versus HonestDoor. Now, I don't know if I could totally even see it perfectly. So let's just look at the Zillow one for a second. So all 50 states, they were 35% of the time within 5% of the sales price, which I guess would mean the sold price. So that's not very accurate. 30, well, I guess 1 in 3 homes they got within 5%. So if you actually think about it that way, maybe that is very accurate. And then within 20%, 80% accurate. Again, similar to us, across Canada, we had 80, I don't know what the different, March and April, the different ones there. So about 82%, so about the same. Within 5, a little bit higher. So that just goes to show what I was kind of saying earlier, that it's so hard to kind of eclipse to be, a perfect valuation model. Hi. Oh.
This particular room is booby trapped.
Got it.
These are the lights.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we have like a flashing.
Oh,
you're
sorry.
leaning on it.
No worries.
Wait.
Okay.
Also, we have a person with their hand up on Zoom. So
Okay, sure. Yeah, no worries. So I guess what I'm meaning to say is like, this is probably as accurate as it's going to get in the next little while. If you guys have the solution, sweet. I think there's big business in trying to predict them. And then further to that point, we've talked to so many companies who are like, hey, we have photos. Our AI climbs through all these photos, and we can know if this countertop is a laminate countertop or a marble countertop, and that's going to increase the value. We can tell good design. And then what we've also seen is you put those things to work, and their accuracy isn't any better as just the models, which kind of predict. So, for example, AI in real estate could also mean different things. Like you could program like a linear regression model and just say 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,500 square feet means 500K. And then eventually that thing will learn. But really, it's like it's quite simple. And as you get more and more data, it just becomes more accurate. So anyway, yeah, if you have some questions.
I was just going to mention that in all of this data, the only thing that you're missing is the human aspect.
Yeah.
In your calculations, because you'll have realtors that will deliberately list a home low in order to get a whole influx of people in. Then you get, 23, 33, 43 showings.
Yeah.
People walk in through the door, they haven't been able to find a house they fall in love, and that with that home, and they start going 5 over, 10 over, 15 over, 20 over, because it becomes a bidding war.
Yeah.
And it's that human aspect that's completely missing, so that the value of that home is completely inaccurate anymore, because it's really what somebody's willing to pay for that home, not necessarily what it's worth. And sometimes what happens is when the banks do the appraisals, then it falls short, and then that person ends up having to pay the extra amount because they really want that house.
For sure. To your point, there's lots of real estate strategies like that one, pricing it low, hoping to get a bunch of offers, getting people all excited because they're all there at the same time, building some FOMO, and then that kind of drives up the price. But before, there was never a way where you really, really knew the price of your home. You kind of saw it on some listings before. So if we can have a pretty good model in kind of, let's say, Edmonton, the city we're in, and then you're hopefully kind of shrinking that yield. So you could, like a realtor could go in and be like, oh, your home's worth 500. They might want to make a quick sale, and then you're done. But then you might ask some questions because all of a sudden there's a free website that says your home's worth 600, and now they have to explain on why maybe they should price it faster. Because just because you always see real estate agents say, your home sold in 5 days, or we have the lowest days on market, or however they put it. So it's also a little bit deceptive because they want to sell it fast. I get it, so do you. Don't want to leave a whole bunch of money on the table. Yeah, please.
So, yeah, the human factor, we live in Edmonton and Alberta, and we've gone through this through 20, 30 years of, Easterners or whoever wants to buy a property to turn over.
Yeah.
It's a commodity, it's not really a home. So I suspect that this helps in that because they don't even have to be here.
Right.
They can just buy it without sight unseen because they can see. And an AI can tell them if the countertop is real or it's whatever.
Sure.
It doesn't, and doesn't really help with finding a home. In some aspects, it may or may not. But often people come to me and they say, "Well, why do you live in Edmonton? Why are you still here? Or why do you live in this neighborhood?" I've got real estate agents who selling a house across the street from me and say, "I don't even know why people buy a house here."
Right.
It's like, what's so big about here? So a question, walkability, transit, all that stuff in your model?
Location.
Yeah, so we don't even put, I mean, we could put the walk score, we could license the walk score and put it up. There's a lot of factors like close to the ravine, like on our mapping software, we can kind of see how close we are to a road, which might decrease it. Further from a road, closer to a ravine might increase it. Walkability isn't a metric that we put in, that particular score. Because I also feel like every individual is unique. Like we almost have different models in every neighborhood. It's kind of hard to spread out a certain formula. Like everyone, there's sometimes an agent that's an expert in this neighborhood and not the other. So we try to do that with the models too. But no, walkability isn't in there. Noise factors like that aren't in there. Just distance to the road.
Like superstore,
No.
hazards, those-
And that's what I mean. Like I don't know, and we should experiment more. How much that plays a huge.
Well, it depends if you're buying a house as a return on investment in 12 months or
Yeah.
buying a house to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just gonna mention like future development as well. Is that something that would be considered?
Yeah. So future development is very, very cool and something we are considering because there's also zoning, and it's also important to know what's happening because if there's an approval for an apartment complex next to you and no one knows that except for the people who are pretty intuitive with the city of Edmonton map and know that's there, that can lower your price. So we're actually trying to factor that in, but an even better version of that is the ability for everyone to see what they could do with their property. So, hey, this is a 7,000 square foot property. This zoning allows for single family, triplex, fourplex, sixplex. There's 3 fourplexes in your neighborhood, 6 triplexes, that kind of thing. So people would at least know what their options are. But yeah, the zoning's out there, but I think being able to scan for that particular zone in a neighborhood would be cool. So if you're like, oh, this is a single family neighborhood, and then you could kind of filter what other zones are there. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is a single family home that's next to me, but it's been rezoned because I have a property like this in a certain neighborhood and I rezoned it or was trying to rezone it for a commercial property. So no one would know that because if you walk by, it's a single family house, but knowing that is powerful, but we haven't nailed down the zoning yet. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there
Oh.
any are you considering like macro metrics like let's say demographics? A lot of new incoming people who now need homes are gonna bid up prices, or if you have like interest rate levels
Yeah.
that make construction more expensive, so supply is gonna get like factored down. Or that's not related to the individual home,
Mm-hmm.
but that climate for a region, I imagine, will
For-
affect, yeah.
For the 1 year forecast, we are doing stuff like interest rate predictions. And, I don't know that I'm an interest rate prediction expert. I don't know that anybody is, but we do try. And then hopefully if we nail it, we nail it. And if we don't, it's kind of one of those things. But I guess what I am saying is that the HonestDoor price changes so fast that you should, even if we didn't know anything about net migration or interest rates, if a certain property started at 600 and then homes on the street went for 625, and then a home just like it with the same square footage and the same year built went for 700, all of a sudden something's happening. We don't know what. Maybe it's interest rates are lower. Maybe there's a lot of migration. Maybe this is the hottest new neighborhood. And then that house will change. And so sure, it might lag by a month there while those factors are incorporated into the model, but it should catch up by itself without knowing anything.
Your predictions are designed to be for today, for June 7th.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? What will it be worth on April next year?
Yeah, so that's the big one that we're trying to come up with. And we've been doing it for a little while because we also don't want to come up with something and everyone's like, this is just baloney.
Well-
So the 1 year forecast will come out this year.
That's on June 7th.
So you'll be able to, let's say it comes out August 1st, you'll be able to see what we think it's worth August 25.
What about the what ifs? Should I put solar panels on my house? Will that double the value? Well, that's good.
So we also are working on a renovation score. We don't have like a solar panel equals, 25,000 in an increase, but we have something where it's like, hey, this home is worth 800, for example, and I'm talking the larger numbers. We think if you renovated this home, the most it could be worth is 1 million. And so we want people to kind of like keep that in mind that to not exceed a certain number because we haven't seen a renovated home sell for higher than this number ever in this neighborhood per square foot. And so it should really get people, like say they have a 1950 house, you want to renovate your house because it's good for you, great. But if you actually care about reselling in a couple of years, maybe do the bathrooms, maybe do this, but but maybe there's no market based on the data on this super duper renovated house over a certain number.
Do or you don't renovate.
Yeah.
Not by solar.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. So originally I have 3 questions, but 2 has been
Okay.
asked. So my other question though is actually, I was interested about developers. So for example, I guess everyone might know about Manchester Square. So that was developed by Group 76 and it was, really different back then.
Yeah.
So my question then, how can commercial developers use HonestDoor, for example? Is there any intention to work with them in terms of business scaling and stuff?
Yeah, and what's cool is I should probably pull up HonestDoor and kind of show you a few things because I can use it really well and it's cool, but I don't know that anyone else knows how to use it, which is also a problem. If you go to, let's just talk about Alberta right now. If you go to any commercial property in Alberta, you'll be able to see what it last sold for. It's city assessed and maybe square footage and year built. So if you go to Manchester Square, you should pull it up on your phone if you know the address. It'd be funny to see it. And it wouldn't have sold because it was a new development. But if you look at any little strip mall that you see and you click on it, you'll be able to see, without going to public records, without trying to hunt for it, you'll be able to see that strip mall sold for $1 million in 2022, which is pretty cool. So we can use it. We don't predict commercial buildings. That's a whole nother ballgame. A lot goes into those values. But you can click on any commercial property and find information. Yeah.
Well, the first question, can city planners use it to say, if only they put an elementary school there, the house would go up by this much?
Can
Or
city?
go down?
Yeah. Say that question again.
Talk to city developers,
Yeah.
city planners. And I ask them, if we put a school there, how will housing prices change? How around it?
Yeah. I don't think we have a formula on like if you put a particular something there, what will happen. But based on that, I actually had a thought. What is interesting is we actually know all the underassessed properties in the city. And so what happens, yeah, because not all of them are transacted through the MLS and sometimes the city doesn't track it. So let's say there's an old strip mall, to your point, and it was worth 500 grand. And a developer came in and renovated the whole thing for 500 grand, tripled the rents, and now this thing should be getting taxed at a way higher rate. The city doesn't know that. And if it does, there's years and years until they figure it out. And I don't know why certain properties fall through the cracks, and this happens with the residential ones too, once they're redeveloped. They have a better system for residential, but not on the commercial side of things. And so now we know that there's a $3 million building. We could see also the tax assessed on our site, and we see that it's only being assessed at, say, $500K. So there's a couple cool things you can do.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, it would be kind of cool because they did recently move Boyle Street, and like now I guess you could see what the value has dropped potentially of all the new houses in that in a new location, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
that'd be kind of an interesting.
Yeah.
I guess identify a location where it affects the price of the house the least.
Mhm.
Essentially, might be interesting.
Yeah.
Correct.
Was there another question you said from Zoom? Oh, okay. This Zoom person, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm on Zoom. Thanks so much. I didn't catch it at the beginning. Do you include? Sorry.
I'm not sure I can answer that one.
Do you include?
I don't know if there's a way to type the question. If you could type your question, sorry, we can't hear you. All right, while the question comes in, I guess I'll just tell you some interesting stats. So these user submissions up here, so that's what I meant about the number of submissions that we get every single month, like new property data points. 33,000 people watch their HonestDoor price every month. So every month they get an update saying, oh, so cool, my house price went up 15,000, obviously influenced by other sales on their street. And then the 600,000 visits that go to our site every month. That's without any advertising. And so it's a pretty cool stat. We're still trying to work on indexing all of our pages because we have 16 million pages across the entire country. And it's actually very hard for us to index all of those pages in Google and to prove to Google that they're all unique. So, we do a number of other things in data that you guys might have questions for. We predict the mortgage renewals in Alberta. So, for example, we know that $10 to $20 billion in mortgages will renew over the next 24 months. We have all of their addresses and their lenders. So it's a very interesting data point, lots of business that can be incorporated just by knowing that. Maybe it's from mortgage brokers coming and saying, hey, I know your mortgage is renewing, kind of getting in front of them at the right time. You guys might have more ideas on what to do with that particular stat. We actually work with real estate agents, even though I said, maybe working with a real estate agent or a full service real estate agent isn't for everyone. We do work with a lot of real estate agents. We do provide them with home values so that they could do it they could use it for their own marketing to their own clients. And then we also sell our API with all our different data points to different companies, some large ones like in Alberta to Service Credit Union, and different companies are starting to use it for different purposes. We hope that our HonestDoor price can get so good that we could actually compete with the legacy brands that are working with banks and being able to produce our home valuations with a confidence score versus the other ones that they're using, because lenders are getting paid a lot of money and it takes a long time to get the appraisals. So if they could for 50 cents call our API, check our confidence score, oh, there's so much data on this particular property, we predict it to be 95% of what we think it's worth, it might help the lending from the banks. So that's kind of a few of our goals.
Click on the chat now, maybe it's the message.
Oh, okay, here it is. So before, we were actually using a number of different sources that were not MLS data to pull sold prices. The MLS data doesn't have all of them. They probably only have 3/4 of all the transactions that go through because not everyone uses an agent or it's within arm's length within family. But in about 3 weeks, we're launching sold prices that are updated every 30 seconds across multiple boards across the whole country. So you'll be able to click, you'll be able to see pictures of the homes that just recently sold or they sold a couple years ago, and all their sold data from MLS. So now we're incorporating all the MLS data across about 8 to 10 different boards across the country.
MLS doesn't have all the data.
MLS doesn't, but we are now joining the MLS data with the data that we have, so we're going to be able to display that. So it'll just be that much more. And photos are pretty cool. So to see from 5 years ago what a house looked like, maybe pre-renovation, like on Google you could see it, but you can only see the outside. So be able to see the inside is pretty cool. Okay.
Click the X. Click the X.
Will disappear. Okay. So I guess a couple other things. Okay, check. Oops, that's it. How do I blow it up here? I don't know if anyone else has, any other questions or any other ways you guys think AI could be used in real estate, because there's so many things. Like you could try to change the world. You could try to come up with home values. That change the world? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you can find a way to save tons of money and maybe disrupt the way homes are bought and sold today. Obviously, that's more revolutionary. Other ways there's like that I've seen going to a lot of real estate conferences is that people are using AI and it's to empower agents, right? Everyone knows that you can empower the individual. They could sift through all this work that they were doing for 3 hours. Now they could do it for half an hour. And those are also powerful tools. But maybe there's a bigger opportunity in empowering the consumer. Go ahead.
Just a last question, I guess.
Yeah, please.
So I guess this room is full of the computing science
Yeah.
students, but my question is more towards the actual people who build the houses. For example, urban planners, civil engineers, construction managers. Like, is there any way that this HonestDoor, what you are building, can be useful for those people who are actually building like on the field?
Mm-hmm. So we know that different cities use our site, and everyone kind of uses it differently. So we don't know exactly how every profession, I guess, is using it, but we know that people from the city of Edmonton are using it. We can, we have talked to many, and we get their emails, and they have City of Edmonton websites. And we actually work with the city of Edmonton and the city of Calgary to actually sell some of their properties. So if they're looking to sell and they don't want to use an agent and they want to sell some money because they have an internal sales team, they'll use us now to kind of unload some of their properties. So a lot of industries use it. I don't know how exactly everyone. Yeah,
So that's good.
yeah. I don't know what else I can tell you guys. No other questions, huh? So, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
We do have a positive comment in the Zoom chat.
Oh,
Should I read it?
sure.
It says, I have a comment. I've been using HonestDoor since 2020 to buy houses in Edmonton, sell houses in Calgary, and now using it to sell a house in Edmonton. I'm finding the website is a great additional resource to understand how to price property and how much to bid. I think we
Yeah.
wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, thanks, Mom. Thanks for that comment. We get a lot of positive feedback. I mean, with anything that's ever public, you also get a lot of negative feedback. And, we'll get like, hey, you guys got the square footage of my house wrong. I mean, there's, a small team. I mean, it's no excuse, but there's 16 million properties out there, and we try to get pretty close. And, for the most part, I think we do a pretty good job. But really, I think empowering the consumer is going to be the big thing that, we're going to continue to focus on. There's a couple B2B sales that we're going to do with banks and even to agents and try to make them stronger. But if we can kind of crack the code on human behavior and getting them to use data and get empowered to kind of do it themselves. I mean, there's more, as you guys know, to selling a house than just data. And sometimes, to this day, people still feel comfortable, having a real estate agent. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's great real estate agents kind of come over and chat with you and sit on your couch and have some tea, and you guys can chat about the market. Then you end up listing your house and losing 30 grand. But that may not change overnight. And I fundamentally think that the reason why the real estate industry today, this is my reason on why it hasn't been disrupted, not because there's not smart minds on it or the valuation models are pretty accurate. I think that there's a handful of companies like ours trying to disrupt it, let's say in North America. And to put into perspective, I don't know the exact number, but let's call it close to 100,000, between 75,000 to 100,000 real estate agents in the country. So if there's one of me talking luckily to you guys, let's say there's 40 people here, that's cool. But usually it could be me and a friend for a coffee or a beer, talking about this. And at that same time, there's tens of thousands of real estate agents having those same conversations with people saying, oh my God, I just heard someone that sold a home and didn't use an agent and didn't have a great experience with that. And so it's pretty hard to overcome. It's almost like it's like war. When you have 10,000 versus 2, I could say anything I want, but if there's the same conversations going on the other way, it's a pretty tricky thing to disrupt. Go ahead.
How do you find the difference in your effectiveness of your pricing for rural versus urban?
Yeah, rural is tough. Just like anything. Like, I mean, if you go into a neighborhood that's so different, it's got old character homes and brand new homes, and it's pretty tricky. Some people are really looking for this particular character home, and some people are looking for like a big mansion. So it's tricky. I mean, it's pretty easy once you get into like, I guess what you would call a more cookie cutter neighborhood, and pricing is just that much easier because everything's the same. But to your point, rural is just that much different. Some people have like 20 acres more, 20 acres less, and I don't even know how to price rural, so it's pretty hard. Go ahead.
Talk about the question, here's a house, what's it worth? But another question would be, I really want a house with 3 to 4 bedrooms and this many square feet and not too far from a school and this and that. Does your interface allow me to search? I guess the other question is, how's that for sale right now? You don't know that.
Yeah, we should go to it. Sorry, go ahead while I pull it up.
I guess the question is, maybe there's a perfect house, but it's not for sale, that won't help me at all. Do you list the ones that are on the market right now?
So just so you guys know how it works, I guess this is Windsor Park. So if I click on a property,
Can't see it on this.
oh, you can't see it? Sorry. Screen sharing is paused. Oh no. Who's the tech wizard here?
Are you still on Zoom?
You guys can't see anything?
We see
Hear you.
just files. Oh, I think you're,
Maybe we're not on
Just
Zoom.
open it in one of your windows, and then if you go back to your Zoom and go to screen share in Zoom,
Do we turn off Zoom?
Zoom should still be there.
Oh, it's right there.
You can go back to the Zoom window. We lost the Zoom window.
Did I press on something? What's this thing? Okay, well, I might not be able to show you guys right now, other than all these screenshots. But I do urge you guys to go to the site and check it out. It's free and it's cool to use. And you guys can email me at dan@honestdoor.com. And with any questions, if you guys are looking for opportunities in the field, want to talk about different ways you can use data in real estate, love to chat with you guys. And yeah.
Yeah, just had a quick question about how much of like, do you envision that there's any kind of like, you're now driving the market prices and that now you're predicting these prices, people are selling at those prices, therefore you've got this cycle of like, you're now controlling the market in a sense?
Yeah.
Do you envision any kind of manual, someone has to get in there and make sure that they're increasing at a steady rate, that like you're not impacting it too much?
Yeah, because sometimes a house price either way down or way higher than it should have sold for sells, and that would really impact the model. And so what happened, so that is happening. And we actually have some really big super fans of HonestDoor. And some people are like, the HonestDoor price says 600, and I'm not going to pay $1 more than 600, and it'll be listed for whatever it's listed. And so we hear that all the time. We hear it from agents being like, holy smokes, you guys are, screwing me over. I can't get my client to budge. They won't pay $1 over the HonestDoor price. So there is a bit of like setting the market in areas like Edmonton where we're quite popular. But I mean, it should be a starting point. Yeah, there's lots of data. So people.
I'm just worried about like on a larger scale, like if you're setting the market, everyone's doing that now. Now all of a sudden, all houses are undervalued, and now you've got a high housing price.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, maybe that's what we'll do. We'll just drop everyone's prices and buy them all up.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're doing that. Yeah. But I could see that happening if all of a sudden we became very popular. But I think that if you became very popular and kind of got it wrong, to your point, like you're really setting the price and driving it one way or another, I feel like people would pick up on that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have two questions. The first one, I don't know if someone has asked that before, but after you think it, how do you get your data?
Yeah, good question. It's a secret. No. Yeah, so I was kind of describing it before. So it comes from all different places. It comes from public records, which is like through the government of Alberta. Then we go direct to different municipalities like Edmonton, Calgary, all the different municipalities across Alberta. Now we have MLS data, which is part of the real estate boards. Open data, Edmonton has a lot of data. So it's just compiling data and then throwing it up on the website. Yeah.
The second question, is HonestDoor open to collaborating to her question, which was about having a platform that actually helps developers, helps close this gap between supply and demand. So is HonestDoor open to collaborating with any other platforms that try to build something like that?
Yeah, how maybe you can be more specific too. I mean, how could we help developers?
Okay, so currently, myself and a friend of mine are coming together to build something that helps to close this gap. So currently the problem with developers is they don't know where the lots are. When they find it, they also don't know what the correct zoning is.
Right.
And then also know what the infrastructure services on that property is.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to see how to find that data, give them the information about the zoning, the structure, and then maybe permits and digital approvals as well. Is that something that HonestDoor would like to help you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, please send me a note. And I think there's probably lots of data that could help you guys out. Even particular on the developer side of things. So if you go to a new community, you always see like a sales suite, and that is, so if someone goes into a show home and buys a home or talks directly to the developer, you wouldn't really know what the pricing of that is because it didn't go through the MLS, it didn't go through a real estate agent, it would go through land titles. So we work with land titles and we're actually able to pull that data. And so we would be able to show what a particular lot, for example, I don't know if that totally answers your question, but it's just another point. We would be able to see what all those lots are going for. So when you do go and there's no transparency, you could be like, oh, I know that lot sold for, whatever it did. Yeah.
That was like, thank you.
Yeah.
How will you take defects of the home into account, such as asbestos, foundation cracks, potential leaks, water tables, poor grading, which could have a huge effect on the value of the home?
Yeah, huge. You're right. We don't. And it's kind of one of those things where who could take those things into account unless they're like very, very visible. And if they're very, very visible, the person buying the home would see them or their inspector would catch them. And if they're not very, very visible, well, then we certainly wouldn't know and maybe not the person viewing.
The person who's listing the house would notice those things because the seller would be obligated to disclose those items. But when you're selling your house to your own self, you're not necessarily responsible to disclose that unless your potential buyer asks.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird nuances with disclosures for sure. We wouldn't know that. Hopefully people are open enough to disclose what's wrong with their home. But obviously, I've been in this world a little bit, and nobody really is that open because they want to get top dollar for their house. So sometimes nobody knows. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a very fun one.
Yeah.
So my question then, you mentioned you only have like 6 people in your team or something like that. So
Yeah.
do you aspire to beat Zillow, for example?
Yeah.
So what does it take for you to
Yeah.
get there? So
Yeah.
for example, technology-wise, or maybe support from government, or even future employees, maybe.
Yeah, I think at the end of this year, we're going to do a very aggressive Series A. We've kind of proved out that our site can work without advertising. We got people coming to the site. Can now we replicate the quality of data we have in a few of the provinces across the entire country? And can we copy this model at an efficient rate? So if we had 6,000 people and we only charged $500 to list a property, it wouldn't really work. So it works really well right now because one person could do 300 listings. Maybe one person could do 600 listings. So if we can use technology to help us, that we can actually sustain that model. It's not that like $500 is inexpensive, but the only company that can afford to do it is us because, well, we have funding. If an agent tried to do that model, it'd be great. But unfortunately, obviously, they have to eat too, and at $500, it doesn't make sense. So if we could somehow use technology to not overhire and to be pretty capitally efficient, I think we could try to pull that off at scale. Yeah.
Right now, I see that the website just outputs a single value, right? And so, have you considered displaying a range of possible prices and within a certain confidence interval, let's say, and if you do decide to do that, what influence would it have on the users or the?
Yeah, I don't know. So right now in our API, so if you signed up to be an API user, you would get the property, you would actually get the confidence, and you would get the range. So we do have that already built in. We just don't display that. I don't really know why we don't display it. Maybe it's like something cool that we could sell. Because right now you can't see the confidence. We can see the confidence, but you guys can't see the confidence. And it's almost like for business purposes, if we use it, if banks were to use it, it'd be cool. So right now you guys are like, oh, the price of my home isn't accurate. We already know that because we could just kind of see that based on our confidence score, but I guess you wouldn't know that, which is also unfair. So we have that built out. So if you do want to become a user of the API, we do have range and confidence built out. Yeah.
And so my question was like, if you do make that public, what impact do you think would it have?
Yeah, I don't know. So because we think our models will catch up. And so we don't really want to show that, we're medium confidence on this particular property. Maybe it's better to show nothing. And then in the next coming month, it becomes a high accuracy valuation. I think it might just be confusing, like what's low, what's medium, what's high. The site is confusing enough. So I think if we integrate confidence to maybe an unsophisticated user, it might really confuse things. But for business purposes, it would make sense. But I don't also have all the answers, so maybe we'll pilot it out in a certain neighborhood. Yeah.
Here's another question from the chat. It says, are historical pricings saved or used in the model or available to the public? What about the last date of the price update?
So the price gets updated every month. And for historical stuff, it's actually pretty cool. So if you go to an older neighborhood, I wanted to kind of show you guys that, but it wasn't working. So if you go to an older neighborhood, you could actually find out what a certain home sold for in like 1911. So we could go back about 100 years. So it's very cool to see it. Like Glenora is an old neighborhood. I think Windsor Park is equally as old, if not older. So it's quite cool to see that. We don't use that particular price for anything in our models. If it's sold for $5,000 in 1911, I don't know if it would have much value, but you can see it, which is pretty fun. But no, we don't use the way historical stuff in the models. So yeah, if you guys, please feel free to email me at dan@honestdoor.com. Love to chat with you guys, and if there's something you guys feel like working on, maybe we can give you guys a data set. If you want to, even join our team, let us know. Otherwise, that's all I got. Thanks so much.